So this is Mark B of Mark B's Perspective, and I want to welcome you to part two of how to control and manage your anger. As those who watched part one know that we went over the first three steps, right, in controlling and identifying your anger. Those steps were: step one were your triggers, step two being your cues or your physical signs that your body telling you that you're getting angry. And then we also went into step three, which spoke about reducing our anger. Because one thing we don't want to do when we're agitated, right, or angry, we don't want to escalate, right? We want to de-escalate. And that's why we had our anger reducers. In part two, we will go over the next three steps in controlling and managing our anger. I want to thank you, man. I appreciate you for following up from part one to part two. That shows me that you found value in this course. And I want to keep it exciting. I ask that you continue to be relaxed. I ask that you also participate by putting your thoughts in the comment section. Put your thoughts in the comment section, right? Because your thoughts may help other people. I'm going to say that again. Make sure you put your thoughts in the comment section because your thoughts may help other ones dealing with some of the same issues that some of y'all are dealing with. So in part four, we want to continue this momentum, right? We're learning more about ourselves and what ticks us, what gets us angry, right? And we trying to reduce that stuff. Now we're dealing with reducers, and now brings us to step four, which is reminders, right? Because in the heat of the moment, we got to have something to remind us to continue this de-escalation process, right? Continue to de-escalate instead of escalating, because it's sometimes one of the easiest things to do is escalate. They get angry, you get angry. They get more angry, you get more angry. They get loud, you get loud, and it's just a continued cycle. But what we want to do here, we want to learn as much as we can about ourselves to break that cycle, right? So when we're in a situation, right, we'll know how to handle it. And I want to be clear, man. I want to let y'all know that in gathering reminders, I'm gonna tell y'all some examples. Well, I'm gonna give y'all some examples of reminders, and then I need y'all to add to that pool. Add to the pool of reminders because this is not cookie cutter. This got to be catered specifically to you. So you got to have some identifying reminders, right? Some things to remind you why not to throw it away, why you should not, right? Is it your family, right? Is it your children? Is it your parents, right? Is it your personal goals? So you got to identify all these reminders, right? Put them in your toolbox. You'll hear me speak a lot about toolboxes during these training, right? Because that's what we got to have. So what we doing is we creating a toolbox, right? And we planning this while we calm. We just reflecting over some of our past situations, and we creating a toolbox now. So when we find ourselves in the very next encounter or situation or whatever it may be, we will have some things in the toolbox to pull out because we'll say, aha, I remember going through that last time. It didn't work out so well, right? And we're going to use some of the stuff that we come up with that we place in our toolbox. So, speaking on reminders, man, we have to remind ourselves when we in the heat of the moment why, you know, we got something to live for, something other, something else to do, the responsibility that we have to our children. We got something, or we have many reasons to say why this is not worth throwing away. But you got to come up with that stuff. You got to come up with these things, reasons, right? I got plenty of them. My life is worth it. I'm valuable, right? I can tell myself that. You may be able to tell yourself the same thing, but we can't just say, make up stuff that when you're in a situation that it has no effect. We need to come up with reminders that's really effective, that you're going to feel it when you think about it, right? Or if you say it, you will really feel it. And it'd be strong enough, that feeling, right? Or that momentum would be strong enough to get you to second guess, not second guess, but think twice before you throw it all away. Right? And tell yourself stuff like, man, if I do this, this may happen or that may happen. We got to have reminders, man. We got to remind ourselves in the heat of the moment, right? Because let me remind y'all, when you in a situation, right? First, we got to know our baseline, meaning your normal. How are you when you cold chilling, when you're in chill mode, right? We call that baseline. So when a situation happens and we're triggered, right, and our body warns us, and we just continue to escalate. So we start at baseline, and then we go to agitation. I need y'all to write this down, please. So in a situation, we're at baseline initially, right? When somebody disrupt that, they trigger us, make us feel some type of way. Now we just agitated. Man, I don't like that. I'm sick of this. And it start kind of mild, right? But from agitation, if not careful, we can start escalating, right? And it can escalate as far as you allow it to, until you interrupt it. And that's what we want to do, is we want to have a number of tools to be able to interrupt this escalation. Because we're agitated now. We feeling some type of way, right? That ain't that bad as long as we don't escalate. So now we're escalating, but we're going to have these reminders, man. My reminder is, Mark, don't throw it away. You came too far. You got too much to live for. You got to have all these different statements or thoughts or ideas that you use to remind yourself that, nah, this ain't worth it. Because I say this, man, sometimes we throw it away for words, for things that people say. That we haven't even gotten to the point of somebody putting their hands on us yet. But in some cases, as I spoke in the first video about disrespect, sometimes we feel disrespected, and that might not even be the case. So we feel disrespected, right? So we feel they disrespected me. It's intentional. I ain't going for that. And then we start thinking of other stuff like, it's the principle. We start going to all these other reasons to throw it away. So now we got to combat all of these thoughts and ideas that we allow to build up internally in our own minds and hearts, right? So we got to build all this stuff. That's why I speak about the toolbox. We got to have the toolbox. It's necessary to have the toolbox and have it with us all the time. So while we calm and we studying, we practicing, that's when we equipping and building our toolbox, right? To combat when we going through it. Because when we going through it, we feel some type of way, we frustrated, going from agitation, right? Irritated, agitated, or whatever you want to say. Now you frustrated, right? And then it escalated all the way up to rage. No, let me do this again. Something happens, right? To you. Somebody's a trigger, something you don't like, right? So now you agitated. Then from agitation, if not careful, we'll go to frustration, right? From frustration, now you angry. I mean, you heated, right? And if that's not checked at that point, man, you're going to go from anger to rage. And rage is almost blind. It's to the point where have you heard people say that they blacked out? They didn't know what happened, right? I can't even remember what happened. You people say that's exactly what happened. And it could be something minor. Somebody bumped into you, somebody stepped on your shoes, you was at the job, your professional job, and the coffee pot is not filled up. Somebody accidentally or even intentionally took your lunch, you had packed your lunch, you put it in the refrigerator, right? In the break room. Somebody got it. Now you ready to throw it all away, lose your job for a lunch that costs less than $10. And that's when we say, they disrespected me. It's the principle. So we got to be careful with the things that we tell ourselves. We got to be very careful with the things that we tell ourselves. So we got to remind ourselves, have this whole toolbox of reminders. We're going to put all these reminders in this toolbox, right? To use for later. Remember, this stuff is to use for later. We're going to remind ourselves when it go down, right? You cannot wait. Let me tell you this now, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot wait until we end that situation and then try to think of a reminder. Because now the odds are really against you, because now you're dealing with your anger, and you might not be able to see clearly at the moment. So you got to have this stuff already prepared, already planned, and ready to go. You already got to have your reminders, and think of as many reminders as possible. If you have a goal to be this football star, basketball star, get this great job, remember, if you throw it away, you might hurt somebody, you know what I'm saying, end up getting arrested, getting a felony on your getting a felony under you, right? Where now you're no longer qualified for that job. So you got to think about this in advance. Now it ain't worth throwing away, not for that, right? Always think about you. What's your goals? How is this going to benefit you? In a lot of cases, I'm gonna tell you all this. In a lot of cases, right? If we do take it there, it still ain't worth it. Because if you're not defending yourself, right, physically, what's the purpose? I don't have no problem with anybody defending themselves. I'm not going to sit here and tell you let somebody physically attack you, right? I'm not the one that's going to say that. But what I will say is think twice before you do something physically outside of that. And sometimes it's even the words that we say if it's in a relationship, because you don't want to create a hostile relationship where you abusing her, she abusing you. That'd be no good, man. So even to the point of saying certain things when it's dealing with your relationship, you are going to have to be careful with that as well. Because once you say these words, hurtful words, you cannot take them back. They heard those words, and in their mind, you really feel that way. Whatever those words were that you said, in their mind, they may think that you actually feel that way. So be very, very careful, even in that sense, even before the physical, being abusive with your words. So be very careful with that, man. Be very careful. You got to use these reminders, man, all the way to the bank. That's why I say think of as many reminders, man. Even to live and to enjoy life, that should be a reminder. Nah, life too good. Or my freedom good. I'm not throwing it away for this. So you got to always remind yourself. That means you got to talk to yourself, man. Before you even get into that argument, you got to talk to yourself, man, and come up with solutions or thoughts or ideas, right, to assist you. And that's all these reminders are, man. Something you can use when you get angry. So after And they use this word because I remember when I was being, going through the training, and I know one of the instructors always said, practice doesn't make perfect. I'm like, huh? He said, perfect practice makes perfect. And what he meant by that was you can practice the wrong way as from here to the moon comes, right? You will probably won't get better until you start practicing it the right way. So he's saying perfect practice. So practice the right way, get it together the right way. And perfect practice does make perfect. Continue to do better. So what I'm saying, after you go through an incident, you have a situation, now you'll come to, right, step 5. And step 5 just talks about, man, uh, thinking ahead, right? Thinking ahead. And it kind of go with your reminders, because as you're reminding yourself, you are thinking ahead, right? So you want to think ahead, man, and kind of think about, and because, even following up with the reminders, think about, man, what can go wrong? Your consequences, right? Of your actions, because anything we do in life, there are consequences. So, in thinking ahead, right? If it escalates to a fight, you hit the person, right? They accidentally hit their head, and worse, or pass away. We know you didn't mean to take that person's life, but there are consequences, as I said, to our actions. So in thinking ahead, man, you got to think ahead and say, listen, man, this is not worth it, right? This is not worth it. I don't want to hurt this person over an argument, over a disagreement. This is not worth it. Think about your consequences, man. Long-term and short-term consequences. A short-term consequence could, you start a fight, you get physically hurt. A long-term consequence, right, could be a number of things. But let's say you hurt that person. Now they want to get back, and now y'all going back and forth. You don't like them, and they don't like you. And now it's beyond words. It became physical. Every time they see you, they try to jump on you. If you catch them off guard, you try to jump on them. All this is about, this anger stuff is about thinking. And as this step 5 says, thinking ahead, man, you got to think ahead, man. The easiest thing to do is get angry and lose control and throw it away and then say that they made me angry. That's why I did what I did. Listen, man, that ain't going to work nowhere but in your mind. That thought process will not work anywhere but inside of your mind, because the laws of the land is not going for it, right? Other people are not going for it because they may want to retaliate. So you can give all the justification. And they say, I've heard this is not with the training, but I have heard this, right? Every man and woman is right in their own mind. So when they go through something and they think it over, right? If not thinking critically, if not being realistic, they feel like they didn't do no wrong. I'm right in their own mind. But somebody else may come up and say, nah, you probably could have did it this way or that way. So thinking ahead, man, is a very important step. We got to be serious with this, man. We got to be honest with this, right? We got to identify when we may have made mistakes or may have not have done as best as we thought we could, or we may have could done a better job. So as when we thinking ahead, we got to do all that. All this stuff need to go in our toolboxes. All this information need to go in our toolbox for that rainy day or that next encounter or that next episode. And every time we do it, man, we should get better and better. It's not no excuse. Oh, I'm just learning it. So this and okay. Remember, people or situations can go from baseline, right, to agitation, to frustration, to anger, to rage quick. And usually when people go in rage, something bad happens, somebody gets hurt. So I want to urge y'all, I want to encourage y'all, right? Don't allow it to go from baseline or agitation all the way up to rage, because there will be consequences when people get hurt. And people don't even necessarily got to get hurt, right? If you put your hands on somebody, there are consequences. And what we want to do, we want to prevent that. We want to give you the strength, right? The authority to govern yourself, the ability to make choices, right? Yeah, you might get angry. Somebody may have done something to you externally that you couldn't control, but it's up to you to be working internally. You got to work that stuff out within, and you got to create these toolboxes for when the next time it goes down, you will have these toolboxes and you ready to go. You ready to blaze out, right? The right way. The right way. So as we started thinking ahead, now we're going to go to self-evaluation. So you went through an incident, right? You handled it, right? Usually you get physical. This time you only became verbally abusive. You didn't necessarily get physical in this specific incident. So in your self-evaluation, and all that is when we say self-evaluation, we're looking back over the incident and trying to see, do we do one or two things? We either going to give ourselves some self-coaching, or we're going to do some self-rewarding for each incident. So we're going to look back at what happened. As I spoke, I said that usually you get physical. You one of the ones that take it there. You don't play the radio, right? This last situation, after learning these skills and getting these tools in your toolbox, you didn't get physical, man, but you did become verbally abusive, right? You probably were still going to take it there, but it just didn't happen. So in that sense, you want to do your self-coaching and say, yeah, I usually would have busted him in the head for real, but I just cussed their behind out. So you're going to coach yourself. Yeah, you did a good job on not physically taking it there. Yes, great job. But you still was aggressive, verbally abusive, and you want to coach yourself on that. And all the coaching is doing is teaching. So in this cycle, in this lesson, you got to constantly be able to teach yourself based on all that you know about you. And you got to be honest. Who can be more honest with you than you? So you know you, and just have them real conversations. And then the rewarding is, and let me explain this. In some instances, you're going to do both. You're going to reward and self-coach. You're going to reward yourself, pat yourself on the back and say, man, I would have been went upside their head. Okay, reward yourself for that, right? But you still need some coaching because you're not where you need to be at, because you did become verbally abusive, right? And was probably threatening towards some physical stuff. So in that instance, you will continue to coach, right? But you're going to reward the good that you did. And this is going to continue to happen. That's why they say cycle, the anger control cycle. When you're managing your anger, it's a cycle. And you're going to keep going around. You're going to keep dealing with it until the day that you don't never get angry no more, if that ever is to happen. But until then, you will continue to deal or go through this anger cycle. You will continue to go through this anger cycle. And you're going to continue to coach, right, on the mistakes that you made, what you could have did better. Darn, I could have did this better. And just be honest with yourself. But where you made improvements, good job. Good job, Mark. Because you would have put them hands on them, but you just cursed them out. So you're not going to excuse what you did do, but at the same time, you're going to coach, you're going to reward, man, you for not, going as far as you did last time, right? But we still want to address those behaviors, because guess what? One angry episode can end us up in prison, in jail, right? Dead, or in a bad situation, in the hospital hurt up, or somebody else in the hospital hurt up. So we got to really manage and take control of this. This is not no joke, man. Lives are dependent on it. Lives are dependent on it at the moment. And then for the consequences, lives can be dependent upon it as well, because the consequences. Now law enforcement get involved, right? So make sure, man, we being real if we want to control and manage our anger. And this is a daily job, right? While you're doing this studying, you better fill that toolbox up so you can be ready to go when it happens. And when it happens, don't throw that toolbox away. Never throw that toolbox away, because you are going to need it. You are going to need it. And I don't want somebody to get caught up in it. That ain't going to work. This don't work. One of the most powerful things I heard in therapeutic programs and groups and stuff like that is this: it works if you work it. That's with anything, because if you don't work it, it ain't going to work. And you'll be the one saying it ain't going to work. That stuff don't work. And you will probably find yourself in a bad situation, because the reality is it works if you work it. That's with anything in life, because if you do not work it, it will not work. I got to say it again, because this is very important, and it should be impactful. It works if you work it. If you don't work it, it will not work. I want to thank y'all for watching the second video of how to control your anger and manage your anger, right? I encourage you to continue to build up your toolbox, add as many tools as possible into that box, right? And watch the miracle happen. Watch it work. It will work if you work it. It's just that simple. Put the work in. They always talked about, this was early on with computers, they had a saying, GIGO. Have you heard of that before? Let me know in the comments section. Have you heard of the saying GIGO? If you haven't heard it before, this is what it stands for. GI stands for garbage in, and the second GO stands for garbage out. If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. That's what they used to say early on in the stages of development, in the developing stages of computers, right? They say computers is nothing but GIGO, because it's only what you put in, that's what you're going to get out. Same thing with your efforts in dealing with your anger, this anger control, anger management, the same thing. Garbage in, garbage out, because this is no cookie cutter. We're not giving you a card and say, here, this is how you deal with your anger. Nobody telling you to look, take a deep look, take a hard look at yourself inside of you, figure out all that's going on, and you come up with things to deal with and address that. That's what this here is, right? That's how you can control and manage your anger, by knowing you. It's just that simple. The better you know you, the more you're equipped, right, to deal with you when you confront it and you're triggered by an external, right, trigger. Then internally, where all the work's got to happen at, you're going to be equipped to deal with that better. You're not going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect, but you will be better equipped to deal with your anger. I want to thank y'all, man, for watching through. If you got any additional questions, right, put your questions in the comment section. Put your questions in the comment section. I thank y'all, man. I encourage y'all to put the work in, because it does work if you work it. I just want to thank y'all again, man, for entrusting me with this course. Thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. But you got to do the work, man. Only you can do the work for you. It does work if you work it. Thank y'all once again, man. Thank y'all once again. And don't forget, man, you got to love yourself. Make sure you love yourself, man. And once you love yourself, you're able to love others. Thank y'all again for watching. Until next time, y'all be safe. Peace.